We may be living in a more liberal and accepting world, but the ideals Democrats strive for sometimes work against them.
Well, I think in large part because Democrats would go ballistic, if I may use that word, at the idea that they are soft on terrorism.
Welcome to WatchMojo.com, and today we're counting down our picks for the top 10 Democrat stereotypes.
Who denies that it is crazy to allow people to own guns who are criminals or are mentally unstable?
For this list, we're exploring the typical stereotypes associated with the Democratic Party in the United States. These are oversimplified categorizations and more one-sided accusations, and by no means do all of the labels apply to every person that identifies as a Democrat.
Does she follow Obama, where we know Obama has not overseen 1 year of even 3% economic growth, and we know where we are in terms of this recovery right now?
We're steering clear of criticism that's leveled at both major parties, whether it has to do with their education or lack thereof, financial responsibility or lack thereof, or the amount of respect they have for the country's history. And don't worry, for the sake of balance, we've got another list for the Republicans.
I can watch my words a little bit, maybe be a little bit more politically correct, but to be honest with you, I think one of the reasons I am doing well is because I don't want to. Being politically correct takes a lot of time.
Number 10, they love illegal aliens.
We should be deporting criminals, not hardworking immigrant families who do the very best they can and often are keeping economies going in many places in our country.
To many, it appears that liberal Democrats unequivocally open their arms to each and every illegal alien that crosses the border. Of course, these perceived illegals are sometimes actual Americans, but that's another story. Anyway, the belief in multiculturalism usually associated with Democrats frequently makes them more open to listening to the plight of this population.
Felons, not families. Criminals, not children. Gang members, not a mom who's working hard to provide for her kids.
But then they often find themselves in the crosshairs of more skeptical individuals who interpret this willingness as a so-called love for illegal aliens.
It's been a long way. It's a long ways away. We have to get back to making America great again.
It's true that some Democrats easily lose their objectivity in these cases. Of course, they also run the risk of exhibiting a superficial interest in an alien story, which leaves them vulnerable to charges of clueless and idealistic behavior.
I have hope, esperanza. Hillary Clinton told me that she would do everything she could to help us.
Number 9. They are union thugs.
And if we actually think that that higher education is important, how are we going to fund it? Like when we thought that high school education was important, we made it public.
The Democratic Party has a long history with organized labor, and with good reason. The ideals of equality and social reform that the party espouses often are mirrored by the goals of the labor movement. To many, however, the relationship between Democrats and unions is an unhealthy one, as the Dems are supposedly essentially in the pocket of the unions.
I heard all 5 of the candidates on stage talk about the need to raise wages in this country, but the one thing I did not hear them say was the word union.
Indeed, Democrats are frequently perceived as little more than union thugs, working together with the labor world to create a liberal mafia that bullies anyone who dares to disagree with or question them.
Both organizations known for turning out voters, and the expectation is if they pick any candidate, it will be a Democrat.
The labor link also builds on the stereotype of Democrats as social whiners looking for a free ride, who band together to manipulate the system.
Union leadership, of course, is in bed with Hillary Clinton, in bed with Sanders to some lesser degree, because those are the people who are going to protect the union hierarchy.
Number 8, they are soft on terrorism.
But the problem is it is a disqualifier for a general election if you are running for president and you're not willing to acknowledge that we have a major problem with radical Islam.
In times of war and terrorism, Democrats are often viewed as passive hippies instead of gung-ho nationalists ready to protect the homeland. In essence, liberals are perceived as soft idealists that would rather talk about problems than battle it out.
For 7 years, I have confronted this evolving threat each and every morning in my intelligence briefing.
Then again, Democratic thinking is less about fear-mongering and more about social discourse. However, at the core of terrorism lies deception and social manipulation, and therein lies the problem. If Democrats don't wave their fingers or scream loud enough, they are typically labeled as soft.
But I don't want a bunch of loopholes and a bunch of shenanigans here. We want something that is very clear, very straightforward.
They're associated with a glass-half-full approach, as opposed to fearing the unknown, which many find an ineffective tactic.
We should put in place stronger screening for those who come to America without a visa, so that we can take a hard look at whether they've traveled to war zones.
Number 7, they are anti-wealth and anti-corporation.
Are we on the side of working people or big money interests?
Many Americans viewed Bernie Sanders' outspoken criticism of wealthy and corporate-friendly politicians during the 2016 presidential election as being par for the course for Democrats. The perceived wisdom is that all Democrats have it in for wealthy individuals, and especially for big business.
Which flame do you think is hotter, the yellow or the blue? Oh, yellow! No, I'm sorry, Caitlin. Come on up here and pay your wrong answer tax.
Of course, liberals are allowed to disagree with each other, believe it or not. Some are massively wealthy individuals themselves and run corporations of considerable influence. But there are plenty of indelible images of Democrats protesting against business and for the rights of the common man and woman.
The problem with that is that a lot of the things that worked for Bill Clinton haven't worked for the American economy over the last few years.
This perpetuates the stereotype that all Democrats are just a bunch of hippies preaching free love and free everything.
All you need is love. All you need is love.
Number 6, they control the media. Some Democrats have touted Jon Stewart as a potential presidential nominee based on his deep knowledge of and influence over the media.
Do you have a favorite shape for that home office? Do you like it?
And given that liberals mostly respected him as host of The Daily Show, well, he could theoretically have a future in politics. Yet so-called woke Democrats, those lefties who know what's happening in the world, sometimes fail to look beyond the liberal media and MSNBC, which means they lack a proper understanding of the larger narrative at work.
It is a rigged system on the Democratic side, even worse than the Republican side, and I don't know why Democratic voters put up with it.
But as the stereotype goes, the Dems control the media, and they all band together to shame the woefully misinformed cavemen and women that have the audacity to disagree with them. It's gotcha journalism at work, folks.
Thankfully, I didn't see the debate last night.
Oh.
So what I did, though, was I've read 35 stories on it today.
Yeah, my guess is 34 of them thought, Hillary Clinton nailed it! You won.
Number 5, they feel entitled.
They're trying to have only Hillary Clinton be the main candidate. They want to hinder Bernie Sanders, Martin O'Malley, and all other candidates from having their voice be heard.
Back in the old days, folks walked uphill miles in the snow both ways to get to school and willingly went to war to repay their country.
Actually, it's supposed to be about the bonds of brotherhood that developed between soldiers during war.
But nowadays, them lazy liberals smoke their marijuana, play video games, and expect everything to go their way.
You got a great job where you don't do anything, you get to smoke weed all day? I wish I had that.
In essence, Democrats feel entitled, or so it's been said. Liberals are often associated with a slacker mentality, which means they'll want something but aren't willing to work for it.
And this is probably one of the most civically engaged, most community-minded groups of people that we've seen in a long time.
Of course, there are those left-wingers that work a corporate job or dedicate themselves to an independent business venture. And for them, well, entitlement isn't necessarily a part of their vocabulary. Even so, if you're someone that screams about the lack of internet access on a plane, you're validating the stereotype for many. Number 4, they're hippies and environmentalists.
Now, what makes Trump such a threat? He's a racist, he doesn't know what he's doing, he has no political experience.
Progressive Democrats are usually seen as aloof, yet socially aware. That's not true for all age groups, but younger liberals have undoubtedly bolstered the myths. There's a faux hippie mentality that many automatically assign to liberals, with the assumption that they have a deep concern for the planet, but a loose concern for their neighbors.
Somebody needs to step up and be a hero here. So I'm thinking I would chain myself to that tree. And that way, if they want to kill that tree, they gotta kill me first.
Every so often, you may just come across an environmentalist who preaches genuine peace and love. Yet Dems have been known to put image maintenance over long-term social relationships. For better or worse, a popular stereotype is that liberals find identity through a nouveau hipster persona and worldly concerns.
I'm here to support the people. Why else would I be out here?
Tell me why you're here to support this organization, this group.
I've heard it's anti-capitalist. I'm a socialist. I'm a Marxist communist.
Number 3, they are politically correct.
See, the PC police aren't saying you can't make jokes. You just can't make them about a protected species. Jokes about men, yes. Gay men, no.
For 21st century Democrats, the idea of political correctness has evolved. Someone like Bill Maher has long touched on this idea, and the stereotype is that modern liberals have a heightened sense of what's considered socially acceptable behavior, or at least they do when it serves their purpose, as the stereotype goes.
You're right. This kid just needs to be shown he's being an Uncle Abel. I can always count on my PC frat brothers to have my back. Let's go, PC! PC!
On the one hand, PC behavior has led to more opportunities for some American minorities. But on the other, it's also empowered some groups to be extra strict with regards to others' behavior, most notably if they don't adhere to the supposed accepted norms.
And Martin O'Malley's campaign is the basis for the title of the movie Trainwreck.
No, he's actually doing very good.
And so, according to this stereotype, liberals are supposedly easily offended by certain words, phrases, or gestures without taking the time to understand the context.
We've got to get down to the problems. We can't worry about being politically correct.
Number 2, they hate guns.
Guns in and of themselves, in my opinion, will not make Americans safer.
Today, one can probably expect to find a gun-related incident in the news any given week. And the typical cliche is that Democrats will immediately take to social media to express their outrage and support anti-gun legislation. Most often, the emotional behavior over guns is justified, but even so, there are times when liberals act without the benefit of context and facts.
Rise up, Democrats. Rise up, Americans. This cannot stand. We will occupy this floor.
And as we know, information is power. Unfortunately, liberals have too often been known to point fingers at those law-abiding American citizens who choose to protect themselves by way of the Second Amendment, which is technically their legal right.
Now, in America, you have the Sandy Hook massacre where little tiny children died, and your government went, maybe we'll get rid of the big guns?
There are no honorable mentions for this list, so let's move on to our number 1 entry. Number 1, they are godless communists.
You started throwing communism around like that's what I've been talking about.
The modern Democrat not only pays attention to science, but also finds a way to diminish all religion and traditional values in the process. Well, at least he or she does according to the stereotype. And since Bible thumpers believe stories that can't exactly be unequivocally verified, well, that presents a problem for liberals.
The Democratic Party is a machine to get votes for its people, none of whom should probably be elected to the high offices of state.
In turn, Democrats are often labeled as godless fanatics for whom global warming is a man-made issue. They've also been called communists because they believe in getting rid of social classes by reducing the wealth of the rich and redistributing it among the less fortunate. And in some cases, replacing capitalism with state-owned means of production.
I think anybody that writes about the redistribution of wealth sounds like a communist to me.
To be fair, there are certainly Democrats that fit all the stereotypes, and they do so without shame. But these labels don't always reflect the evolving perspective of liberals.
People do not get the opportunity to learn about the different candidates. They don't get to hear the different platforms.
Do you agree with our list? What do you think is the most common stereotype of Democrats?
You can't make me live anywhere you live! This is America!
For more liberal and not so liberal top 10s published every day, be sure to subscribe to WatchMojo.com.
And if you're gonna belittle and make fun of PC people like that, then who's to say he won't do it to other marginalized groups like us? I mean, this kid could be the next Hitler. And if you guys could stop Hitler, what would you do?